Hey, what's up you guys? So today I wanted to discuss New Moon, the book versus the movie. So as you know, I recently reread New Moon. If you want to watch that, you can check it out in the card or the links or wherever the fork it is. We're going to talk about the book versus the movie today. All of the things that they kept kind of the same, all of the things they kept kind of different, how I think this changes the overall story. I did not overly write this video other than just a bunch of notes that I have, so it may be a little rambly. I may not make sense at times, but it's fine because New Moon doesn't make sense the entire time. So let's start off at the beginning where Bella has the dream and Edward does not sparkle enough in the movie. I'm sorry, he just doesn't. He doesn't sparkle enough in any of the movies and it always annoys me. But anyways, she gets a scrapbook and a camera for her birthday in both. But in the movie, she starts to get into actually taking the pictures and putting together the scrapbook before she does in the book, because in the book it happens after the party, but in the movie it happens before the party, which doesn't make as much sense as it does in the book because it just doesn't fit with her personality. She's not a huge memories kind of person. She's not very sentimental. Whereas in the book it makes more sense because she's kind of scared that she may be asked to leave. She's just not sure where Edward's head's at in the book. And so I definitely appreciated it more in the book just because it made more sense and it fit her character better. And so from there, they start watching Romeo and Juliet. The difference here is they do it in the classroom in the movie, whereas in the book, they do it like at Bella's house. And doing it in the classroom, everyone would have heard their conversation. And you can't talk about those types of things without getting like people called on you, getting taken to like a psych ward, having someone put you on like a hold and all that stuff. Because he's really talking about some concerning stuff in this scene. Seriously, someone would have heard them and someone would have been hella concerned. But from there, we go to the party, and in both the book and the movie, they kind of ignore Victoria for like the first half of both. I didn't really realize this until I watched the movie and they acknowledged Victoria for like half a second right before the party. I think that that was done better in the movie, to have acknowledged Victoria at least a little bit, because in the book, it kind of comes out of nowhere that Victoria is still around. You kind of have forgotten about her by the point that you see her again. So then Emmett says, dating an older woman, hot, and it's one of the funniest lines in the whole damn thing, and then she gets a paper cut. One of my problems that I have with the paper cut, both book and movie, that I didn't realize until I watched the movie, was Alice should have seen some of that coming. She can see the future. She should know. She should have been able to know, but she didn't, so it's fine. But they did change this moment a little bit in the movie because Alice said that she couldn't stand to be there and she left, and everyone else left as well. But in the book, she didn't have to leave right away. She left a little bit into her getting stitched up and stuff, but she didn't have to leave right away. She was in a lot more control than that. And so I didn't like that they kind of took some of that away from Alice, because I think that that's part of what makes her character, is the fact that she is kind of one of the better ones off at being a vegetarian, because she always kind of knew this was going to be her way because of her foresight ability. Then Carlisle stitches her up. This moment kind of confuses me in the movie because he winds up burning like all the gauze and stuff, which I don't think he does in the book. And I don't understand what that does. I don't understand why he would burn it. Like, there are other ways of disposing it, and that just feels like a dangerous way to dispose of things that you could just dispose of by taking out and throwing away or getting rid of, you know? Like, it just didn't make sense to me. It seemed kind of dumb. So then in the movie, she goes to school the next day. Edward isn't really there, and then he asks to go on a walk with her after school. And so they kind of sped up this whole part in the movie rather than in the book, where it kind of took a few days. He kind of stuck around for the end of the week. I wish that they had let it sit for a few more days in the movie, just so that way we could see Edward's kind of reaction to everything, because I feel like we missed that. And so it made the jump from him at the party being like sweet and nice to Bella and loving her and all that stuff to breaking up with her very abrupt, and a very abrupt shift that didn't make as much sense and felt like it came more out of nowhere, whereas in the book you kind of saw it coming. So one note that I had on this scene while I watched the movie is that Edward should have just broken up with her, but he shouldn't have left the country. Like, he shouldn't have left Forks. It would have been a much more interesting story had he stuck around, and I wish that that would have happened, because I kind of want to know how he would react to things. I kind of want to see him be jealous of Jacob during these parts where he can't be with her because he's scared that he's gonna like hurt her, but also she has to like move on and find something different. And so I think that would have just made a better story, and I wish it would have gone that way, but it didn't. Anyways, another book movie difference is the eyebrows. In the book, the eyebrows are not described as caterpillars, and in the movie, I would describe them as caterpillars. So then Sam saves Bella, and one of the things that I feel like we were missing in the book is Sam is hot, and Bella did not describe him accurately as being hella hot, and she should have. So next we get to the "there's a possibility" moment, and this moment always makes me laugh. So one time in AP Spanish in high school, my sister and I were both in this class. It was a class of about 6 people, and at least 4 of the people in the class had all watched Twilight. We had this one audio exercise where we were listening to someone speak in Spanish, and then we had to kind of write out a response to it. This little clip that we were listening to had "There's a Possibility," it had that song playing in the background. None of us could decipher the Spanish because we were all just laughing our asses off about Twilight, and we just couldn't do it. It was so difficult. That was the hardest audio exercise I've ever done in my life in regards to Spanish. But that whole scene though is done really well, I think. In the book, we don't really see what she's doing or anything, but it is kind of described as her being a zombie, and so I like how it looks like she's a zombie. And I like how we just kind of see her in the same spot all of these different months, not really moving, not really changing. I think that it's just done really well. Then we have Bella emailing Alice in the movie, kind of telling her about what her months are like, what her time is like. That never happened in the book. Like, I get why that's done because we need some way to kind of hear her thoughts on stuff, but it never happened in the book. I would have wished that she would have started like a journal or something. Like, she would have read a self-help book and been like, okay, I need to start doing something different, and so she starts journaling or something just to help herself out. And then also in the movie, something that I really realized, which I realized in the book as well, but in the movie it just hits so much harder. Bella's so weird. She just is so impulsive in this book, and nobody seems to notice. It's just really weird. So then we have the whole waking up bit where she kind of gets out of her funk and she goes to a movie with Jessica. They watch a zombie movie, and then we have Bella seeing the guys outside thinking she recognizes them. In the movie, you don't really feel that recognition like you do in the book. You really just think they're strange guys. And also she sees Edward and she's not supposed to see Edward. And so I feel like this whole scene was done kind of poorly because also she winds up riding a motorcycle, which she didn't really do in the book. And so I get why it was done this way, but it just feels very random, and you just don't see the connection to Twilight as much. You don't feel like connection to Edward during the scene, and so it really seems very weird that Edward kind of pops up and starts talking. And again, she never saw Edward, she just heard his voice, and I wish that we would have just heard his voice. Also, this entire scene, as I'm just kind of watching it back again, all I can think is poor Jessica, because like, what a weird situation, and what a sketchy situation too, where like, you don't know what to do because you don't want to leave this person to get like murdered, but also you don't want to get murdered. So then Bella acquires bikes to go get fixed with Jacob, and in the book, it kind of makes sense how we get the bikes to Jacob, because you see her see the bikes on the side of the road, you see her be like, I'll take him and get him fixed, and having whole conversation about, well, it's gonna cost a lot to get it fixed, and her coming to the conclusion that, oh, I know Jake and he knows how to fix stuff. But in the movie, you don't really get any of that. And so again, this just feels like it's coming out of nowhere. So I wish that in the movie they had worked on the transitions a little better, because transitionally, shit just feels like it comes out of nowhere all of the time. Because of that, Jacob's reaction to Bella getting the bikes just seems kind of off. He doesn't seem like as excited to kind of help her with them as he does in the book. And it's just a much more fun experience in the book. And so honestly, during this whole bit, they start to rush Jacob and Bella a little bit. We get so many more scenes of them fixing stuff and coming up with other plans and starting the whole hiking thing and having like the homework days. And they just don't have a whole lot of that in the movie, and I wish they did, because it's part of why I'm Team Jacob, because it's just such cutesy fun moments that we get with them that we don't really ever get with Edward. And I just wish that we had had that, because that's what really makes Jacob a contender for me for Bella, or at least back when this first came out, that's what made him a contender for me. And then the next thing is the bikes get fixed, and so they go to take them to go ride them, and in the process of doing that, they see Sam and his people cliff diving. Bella in the movie never says that she wants to go cliff diving. She needs to say that. Like, again, it's just making so many of the things that she does feel like they're coming out of nowhere in the movie, because all she really does with Jake is ride the bikes. But in the book, she like goes hiking with him, they ride the bikes, and they plan to go cliff diving, and they make all these plans to go do things, and it just makes their relationship feel so much more developed in the book. So from there, we go and we watch Face Punch, Punch Faces, which is my favorite part of the movie. I wish that we had that line in the book, honestly, because it's so funny to just hear that movie happen in the background. I think that this scene was done exceedingly well, because you can just feel the awkward tension in the scene, and you could just feel how uncomfortable it is, and you can see how Mike and Jake are really just struggling with each other. But also, to that same point, at the end of this scene where it's just Jake and Bella talking, Jake starts to get really pushy for a relationship, which I don't feel like he did in the book. Like, he seemed to be a lot more understanding in the book, which I like so much better. Like, he still developed feelings and stuff for her, but he also understood where she was at and understood kind of where this was gonna go. But in the movie, it didn't feel that way. He was just so pushy. So from there, Jake gets mono, but really he becomes a werewolf. Bella goes to go see him again. In the movie, they add tattoos to the werewolves, and I don't really get this. Like, it just doesn't make sense. At least I don't think in the book that they had tattoos, but it is what it is. It's fine, it's not that big of a deal, but it also just feels super random. And again, this is another one where I think the transition could have been done better, because the amount of time in between Jacob kind of going MIA and Bella going to go find him seemed to be like a very short amount of time, but really it took like a couple weeks or so. And so from there, she goes and she finds the meadow, which again, she never started doing that with Jake in the movie. And so it just feels like it comes out of nowhere. Like, it doesn't feel like she should know how to find the meadow on her own, because she never found it on her own before. And she also wasn't like a notorious hiker. So they should have just fixed that so that it made sense that she knew where the meadow was. So Jake and her got in a fight, like in the last scene, and then we got to the scene that we were just at with the meadow. And now Jake comes and finds her in her bedroom, and she learns that he's a werewolf. And I wish that we had in the movie her kind of struggle to confront Jake when she thinks he's like murdering people, because we just don't get that in the movie, and it feels kind of weird that she thinks that he's murdering people, because we just don't understand where that's coming from, whereas in the book you have so much more understanding as to where that's coming from, because you hear about all these missing hikers and you hear about all this bad stuff that's happening in the woods. She was never like threatened by them in the whole meadow scene, so I was just kind of disappointed with that as a whole, because it just doesn't feel like a huge struggle in the movie. They didn't really show that struggle as much. And then to that same point, when she goes and she confronts Jake, the discussion around Laurent and Victoria is a lot better in the book, because again, there's just a lot of jumping to conclusions that happens in the movie that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. There's so much stuff in this movie that just doesn't make a whole lot of sense when you sit down and watch it critically, because Jake never really questions why she knows their names or why she knows who they are, whereas in the book he's like, oh no, those weren't friends of yours, were they? But in the movie he's not like that. He just assumes like, oh, they're evil. And then also he kind of asks like, why do you know their names and stuff in the book, whereas in the movie he just never asks that. So then Jake starts hunting down Victoria, and again, this is just another transition that felt rushed in the movie. It just feels like it takes all of like a minute in between Jake hunting for Victoria and Bella jumping off a cliff. Bella lands in water, and Victoria gets so much closer to Bella in this than she does in the book as well. Like, she gets close, don't get me wrong, but she's literally like face to face with her almost. That kind of bothered me a little bit, because it doesn't make sense. Again, like, Victoria, if she had gotten that close, would have killed Bella. But anyways, Jacob saves Bella and he gives her CPR, and in the book he successfully gives her CPR. In the movie, he successfully gives her CPR as well, but that's movie magic, because what the fuck are those chest compressions, Jacob? Like, you need to go like 2 inches deep, staying alive, and he's not doing it. He's doing a terrible job. Do better, Jacob. But then Alice comes back, Jacob interacts with Alice, and in the movie, Alice is so much more aggressive with Jacob than she is in the book. Like, they barely interact in the book, but she's just not that aggressive. It's more Jacob being aggressive and more her being like a little disgusted. And then Jacob picks up the phone and he's so aggressive with Edward, and Alice runs in. In the movie, all of this happens so much faster than it does in the book, and that kind of bothered me, because in the book, Like, she sees the future, she goes to Bella, asks what happened, then she calls Rosalie and figures out what happened. Whereas in the movie, it's like she runs in and she immediately knows everything that has happened, right? She knows what Edward was told, she knows what he's about to do, she knows that it was Rosalie that told him. Like, she just knows everything way too fast. And so I feel like we were again just missing transitions here. And so then we travel to the Volturi, and the travel is much better in the movie because it happens a lot faster, because in the book it's just very slow going and there's not a lot that happens during the whole travel bit. And also we get a Virgin Airlines ad. Then we go to the Volturi, we see them, and Michael Sheena's Arrow is really the best part of this movie. He is better in the movie than he is in the book, because like, holy shit, this acting was fantastic. Like, the way that he's acting, the happiness, the giddiness, I love it. And so then as they're walking to go meet the Volturi, we have the elevator ride where it's so awkward because it's like Bella, Alice, Edward, and then like Jane, Felix, and Dimitri. You have this like elevator music in the background and they're all just kind of looking off, not at each other. And it's a fantastic scene. I wish that we had had a scene like that in the book, but we didn't, because that adds just a good little bit of comedy right before a very tense moment. And so then we get to the Volturi and Edward gets in a fight because they talk about killing Bella, and that fight, I don't remember that happening in the book. Like, maybe a minor fight did happen, but like, it wasn't that close. It wasn't like he was about to die. So they way overblew that in the movie, but I think it kind of needed to happen because there really wasn't a whole lot of action in this movie otherwise. And then the next thing is kind of just a note generally about the movie versus the book, is there's this whole discussion around souls or no souls with the vampires, and they really overblow that discussion in the movie. Like, it feels like it was just a couple like one-off lines in the book, whereas in the movie it feels like it's the whole central theme, and like, it's just not, like, it's not that big of a deal. And then the next thing as like a whole kind of note is, in the whole traveling to the Volturi bit, Alice talks to Bella about potentially changing her in the book. That never happens in the movie, and I wish it did, because I thought that that was just such a good bonding moment between her and Alice, and it just makes me sad that that's not there. And then also during this whole like ending bit with the Volturi, as well as right after we get back from the Volturi with Edward and Bella, I'm really glad that we kind of skipped over the whole "oh crap, I died" bit, because in the book there was a whole like minute and a half worth of each of them being like, "oh man, I'm dead and that's why I'm seeing you again" bit, and it's just so annoying because they both do it and it's like the same conversation and it's just annoying as hell. And then we get Edward asking Bella to marry him, and that's the end of the book and the movie. So thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please like, subscribe, comment, all of the things. I will see you in my next one. Bye!